This is a fictional American romance story created using AI for entertainment purposes only, intended strictly for audiences 18 years and older and not suitable for children under 18.
The city of New York shimmered beneath a velvet sky, its skyline reflecting ambition, power, and secrets too expensive to confess. From the 32nd floor of a glass tower overlooking Central Park, Nathaniel Brooks stood motionless, one hand resting lightly against the cold window. Below him, headlights moved like veins of light through the streets, restless and alive. He had always found comfort in order, in patterns that made sense. But lately, nothing made sense. Behind him, the soft echo of heels clicked across marble flooring. "Are you coming?" Isabella's voice floated through the room, light, almost musical. "We're already late." Nathaniel didn't turn immediately. He watched the city a moment longer, then finally spoke. "We're always late," he said quietly. "It's expected." A pause, then a soft laugh. "That's because we're worth waiting for." He turned then. Isabella stood near the doorway, wrapped in a black silk dress that clung to her like a secret. Her hair fell effortlessly over one shoulder, her makeup flawless, her expression carefully composed. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, and often she did. For a moment, Nathaniel simply studied her. There had been a time when looking at her felt like stepping into warmth. Now it felt like analyzing a painting. Beautiful, distant, untouchable. "You look stunning," he said, his tone polite, practiced. "Only stunning?" she teased, tilting her head. "That's disappointing." He gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You always exceed expectations." She watched him for a second longer than usual, as if searching for something that wasn't there anymore. Then she looked away. "Come on," she said. "The Carters are hosting tonight. We can't make a bad impression." Nathaniel reached for his coat. "We never do." The Carter penthouse was everything one would expect. Floor-to-ceiling windows, champagne flowing endlessly, laughter that felt just slightly too loud to be genuine. Nathaniel moved through the room with ease, shaking hands, exchanging polite conversations, offering calculated smiles. He was respected, admired, even feared in certain circles. A man who built empires out of numbers and dismantled them just as easily. But Isabella, she was the light of the room. She laughed effortlessly, touched arms lightly, leaned in just close enough when speaking. People gravitated toward her, drawn by something intangible. Nathaniel noticed everything. The way she checked her phone when she thought no one was looking. The subtle tension in her shoulders when he stood too close. The way her laughter shifted, slightly more genuine, when a tall man across the room caught her eye. Julian Carter. Young, confident, dangerous in the way men were when they had nothing to lose. Nathaniel's gaze lingered. Julian said something to Isabella that made her smile. A real smile, not the polished one she wore like armor. Something cold settled in Nathaniel's chest. He walked toward them, his steps measured. "Julian," Nathaniel said smoothly as he approached. "I didn't realize you were back in the city." Julian turned, his expression flickering just for a second before settling into charm. "Nathaniel," he replied, "wouldn't miss an event like this." Isabella straightened slightly. "We were just talking about the new development project," she said quickly. Nathaniel nodded. "Of course." Silence lingered, thin, fragile. Then Nathaniel placed a hand lightly on Isabella's back. She stiffened. It was subtle, but he felt it, and that was enough. Later that night, long after the party had dissolved into distant memories and empty glasses, Nathaniel sat alone in his study. The house was quiet, too quiet. He opened his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his face. A file sat there, untouched, unnamed, waiting. For weeks he had ignored the signs, dismissed the feeling, chosen silence over suspicion. But Nathaniel Brooks was not a man who lived in uncertainty. His finger hovered over the keyboard. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began to type. Private investigator, discreet services. The click of the keys echoed in the stillness. Upstairs, a door closed softly. Nathaniel didn't look up. His decision had already been made, and somewhere deep inside him, something colder than anger had begun to take shape. Not rage, not heartbreak, control. Trust, he whispered to himself almost absently, is just another asset. And like any asset, it could be taken away. The first crack did not come with a sound. It came quietly like a misplaced glass, a delayed response, a silence that lingered just a second too long. Nathaniel Brooks noticed everything. It was, after all, What made him dangerous? It began with the phone. Isabella had never been secretive before. Her life had always unfolded in the open: charity galas, social media posts, long brunches documented in curated perfection. But now her phone had become an extension of something private. She turned the screen away when messages appeared. She carried it everywhere, even into rooms she used to leave it behind. At night, its faint glow would flicker beneath the covers, long after she thought Nathaniel had fallen asleep. He never confronted her. Not yet. Instead, he watched. 3 nights later, she came home at 11:47 p.m. Nathaniel was seated in the living room, a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand. The television played softly in the background, muted, irrelevant.
"You're still up?" Isabella asked, slipping off her heels with a casual grace that felt rehearsed.
"I had work," he replied evenly. "You?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Dinner ran late," she said, "with Claire." Nathaniel nodded. Claire had posted a photo 3 hours earlier from a different restaurant, different company. He had already checked. "Of course," he said. Isabella smiled faintly, relieved by the absence of questions. "You should have come. It was nice." "I'm sure it was." She walked past him, her perfume trailing behind a scent he didn't recognize. That, more than anything, stayed with him. Days blurred into patterns. Patterns became evidence. Late meetings that extended into midnight. Calls taken in hushed tones behind closed doors. A growing distance that could no longer be explained by stress or routine. Nathaniel didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse, didn't plead. He adjusted. He began coming home earlier, unannounced. He stopped sharing details of his own schedule. He listened more than he spoke. And slowly, piece by piece, the illusion began to unravel. Across the city, in a high-rise office overlooking the Hudson, Isabella laughed in a way she hadn't in years. Julian Carter leaned against the edge of his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened just enough to suggest carelessness. "You're thinking too much," he said. "That's easy for you to say," Isabella replied, though her smile lingered. "You don't have a life that depends on appearances." Julian tilted his head. "Don't I?" She studied him. There was something reckless about him, something unpolished. He didn't move like the men in her world calculated, measured. He moved like someone who believed consequences were optional. It was intoxicating. "This isn't simple," she said quietly. "It doesn't have to be," he replied. Silence stretched between them. Then he stepped closer, not enough to touch, but enough to change the air. "You deserve more than a marriage that feels like a contract," Julian said. Isabella exhaled slowly. "A contract," she repeated, almost to herself. That's what it had become, hadn't it? No passion, no spontaneity, no warmth, just expectations, just perfection, just Nathaniel always composed, always distant, always in control. And for the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to lose control. That night, she didn't go home immediately, and when she did, it was past midnight, again. Nathaniel sat in his study, the soft glow of his desk lamp illuminating a folder that had grown thicker over the past week. Photos, time-stamped entries, a report detailing movements, locations, interactions. He flipped through them slowly, methodically. There she was, Isabella, outside an office building, inside a restaurant, laughing, always with him. Julian Carter. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but his expression remained unchanged. Emotion was inefficient. Emotion clouded judgment, and Nathaniel Brooks did not allow himself the luxury of losing clarity. He closed the folder, then reached for his phone. "Keep following them," he said calmly when the line connected. "I want everything documented." A pause. "And be ready," he added. "For what?" the investigator asked. Nathaniel looked toward the darkened window, his reflection staring back at him, calm, unreadable. For the right moment. Upstairs, Isabella stood in front of the mirror, slowly removing her earrings. Her reflection looked flawless, but her eyes were different. Alive, restless, dangerous. Her phone buzzed. A message. "I can't stop thinking about you."
Her lips parted slightly. For a moment she hesitated, then she typed back, "Tomorrow night." She stared at the message before hitting send. A decision. A line crossed. Downstairs, Nathaniel closed his laptop. He didn't need more proof. What he needed now was timing. Perfect, precise, irreversible. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks with quiet precision. "A mistake," he murmured softly, almost thoughtfully, "is only powerful if you let it remain hidden." His eyes darkened. But exposure... He paused. A faint, cold smile touched his lips. That's where the real consequences begin. And somewhere in the city that never slept, two people moved closer to a moment that would destroy everything. They just didn't know it yet. The truth did not arrive as a shock. It arrived as confirmation, cold, precise, inevitable. 3 days later, Nathaniel Brooks sat inside a private conference room on the 41st floor of his firm. The city stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls, but his attention remained fixed on the man seated across from him, Daniel Reeves, former NYPD, now a private investigator with a reputation built on discretion and results. He slid a thin black folder across the table. "I believe this is what you were looking for," Daniel said. Nathaniel didn't touch it immediately. "Walk me through it," he replied. Daniel nodded, leaning back slightly. They've been seeing each other consistently for the past 3 weeks. Meetings started casual, public places, business hours. That changed quickly. Nathaniel's expression remained neutral. "How quickly?" "Within days," Daniel said. "Private dinners, extended stays, different locations each time. Restaurants, his office, and," he paused briefly, "hotels." A flicker passed through Nathaniel's eyes. "Gone as quickly as it came." "Names," Nathaniel said. Daniel flipped open a tablet, pulling up a timeline. Julian Carter booked multiple suites under a corporate account. Rotating hotels, but one location stands out. High frequency. Discreet staff. Minimal surveillance leaks. Nathaniel finally reached for the folder, opened it. Inside, photographs. Isabella entering a hotel lobby, her face partially turned but unmistakable. Julian beside her, his hand resting just a little too comfortably at the small of her back. Another image, grainy, taken from across the street, curtains drawn, silhouettes barely visible. Intimacy didn't need clarity. It revealed itself in posture, in proximity, in the absence of distance. Nathaniel closed the folder. "Anything else?" he asked. Daniel hesitated, then, quietly, "There's video." Silence filled the room. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. "Send it." Daniel studied him for a moment. Most clients, they stop here. They confront. Or they walk away. Nathaniel's gaze lifted, steady and unyielding. "I'm not most clients." "No," Daniel admitted. "You're not." That night, Nathaniel sat alone in his study. The house was still, too still. His laptop screen illuminated the darkness as the video played. Black and white footage from a hallway camera. Time-stamped. 23:18. Isabella stepped into frame, her hair loose, her expression unguarded. She looked lighter. Julian followed seconds later, his hand catching hers before the elevator doors closed. Nathaniel paused the video, rewound it, watched again. Not for confirmation, but for detail. For the subtle things no one else would notice. The way she didn't hesitate, the way she leaned toward him, the way she smiled without restraint. A version of her Nathaniel hadn't seen in years, if ever. He closed the laptop slowly. There was no anger in his movements, no visible fracture, just silence, heavy, absolute. Upstairs, Isabella slept, peacefully, unaware. The next morning, Nathaniel woke before sunrise. Routine had always been his anchor. Shower, suit, coffee, control. He moved through the house with quiet precision, adjusting his cufflinks as he stepped into the kitchen. Isabella entered moments later, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair slightly tousled. "Morning," she said, her voice soft. "Morning," he replied. She poured herself coffee, avoiding his eyes for just a second too long. "Big day?" she asked casually. "Always." A pause. "I might have dinner plans tonight," she added, "with clients." Nathaniel took a slow sip of his coffee. "Of course you do." She looked at him then,
searching. Is that a problem? No, he said calmly. Why would it be? She hesitated, then smiled. Good. By noon, Nathaniel had already made 3 calls. The first to his bank. I want all joint accounts flagged, he said. No movement without my authorization. The second to his legal team. Prepare preliminary divorce filings, he instructed. Grounds. Infidelity. I want everything airtight. And the third to Daniel. Set it up, Nathaniel said. A pause on the other end. You're sure? Daniel asked. Nathaniel's voice didn't waver. I don't deal in uncertainty. Another pause. Location? Daniel asked. Nathaniel turned toward the window, the city sprawling beneath him. Somewhere public enough to matter, he said, but private enough to control. That evening, Isabella stood in front of her mirror once again. The same ritual, the same perfection. But tonight there was something else. Anticipation. Her phone buzzed. Julian, penthouse suite, 9 p.m. Don't be late. Her heart quickened. For a moment, just a moment, she thought of Nathaniel, of the life she was risking, the stability, the name, the power. Then she looked at herself in the mirror, and all she saw was a woman who refused to feel invisible anymore. She picked up her purse and walked out. At 8:57 p.m., Nathaniel Brooks stepped out of a black car in front of one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels. Glass, steel, silence. He adjusted his jacket, his expression calm, measured, final. Daniel approached from the side. They're already inside. Nathaniel nodded. And the police? He asked. On standby, Daniel confirmed. You give the signal, they move. Nathaniel's gaze lifted toward the towering building. Lights flickered behind tinted glass, lives unfolding, mistakes being made. He exhaled slowly. This isn't about catching them, he said quietly. Daniel frowned slightly. Then what is it about? Nathaniel's eyes darkened. It's about ending it. Properly. Inside, an elevator ascended. 2 lives moving toward collision. And for the first time since the truth had revealed itself, Nathaniel felt something. Not rage, not heartbreak, but something far more dangerous. Resolution. Once, he murmured under his breath, stepping toward the entrance, is a mistake. His jaw tightened. But this... A faint, merciless calm settled over him. This is a choice. And tonight, they would pay for it. The elevator ride was silent. Too silent. Soft jazz drifted through hidden speakers, an artificial calm that clashed with the tension tightening in Nathaniel Brooks's chest. The mirrored walls reflected him from every angle. Sharp suit, steady posture, eyes devoid of hesitation. Beside him, Daniel Reeves checked his watch. Penthouse level, he said quietly. They checked in under his name. No interruptions so far. Nathaniel gave a slight nod. Police? He asked. Waiting downstairs, 2 officers. They'll come up when you give the signal. Nathaniel's gaze remained forward. Perfect. Controlled. Final. The elevator chimed. Doors slid open. The hallway was lined with soft carpet and muted lighting, designed for privacy, for discretion, for secrets. Nathaniel stepped out first. Each footstep measured, each breath steady. At the end of the corridor, suite 3201, a closed door. A thin line between illusion and truth. Daniel stepped closer. Once we go in, there's no undoing it. Nathaniel didn't look at him. There never was. He raised his hand and knocked. Inside the suite, laughter echoed faintly. Isabella stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, the city glittering beneath her like a promise she had finally chosen to believe in. Julian approached from behind, his voice low. You're thinking again, he murmured. She smiled, though it wavered slightly. Just for a second. He brushed his fingers along her arm. Don't. A knock at the door. They both froze. Julian frowned. You expecting someone? No, Isabella said quickly. Another knock, sharper this time. A flicker of unease passed through her. I'll get it, Julian said, already moving. Something in her chest tightened. Instinct. Fear. Too late. The door opened, and time stopped. Julian's expression collapsed first, confusion twisting instantly into recognition. Nathaniel.
Nathaniel stood in the doorway, composed, unreadable. Behind him, Daniel, and further down the hall, 2 uniformed police officers stepping into view. Isabella's breath caught, her world shattered in silence. "Nathaniel," she whispered, her voice barely there. He stepped inside slowly, his eyes moving across the room with surgical precision. Disheveled sheets, 2 glasses of wine, her heels by the couch. Every detail, every lie, confirmed. "No," Isabella shook her head, stepping back. "This isn't—" "Don't," Nathaniel said calmly. Just one word. But it cut deeper than any scream. Julian straightened, attempting composure. "You can't just barge in here." "I can," Nathaniel interrupted, his tone flat. "And I just did." The officers entered behind him. The shift was immediate. Private sin became public exposure. "What's going on here?" one officer asked, scanning the room. Nathaniel didn't take his eyes off Isabella. "I'd like this documented," he said, "for the record." Isabella's knees weakened. "Nathaniel, please," she whispered, stepping toward him. "We can talk about this." "Talk?" he echoed softly. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, something colder. "You've had weeks to talk." Her breath hitched. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Silence crashed over the room. Julian shifted uncomfortably. "Look, this is between you 2. There's no need to involve." Nathaniel turned to him slowly. "You're right," he said. A pause. "Then there's no need." But his gaze didn't soften. If this had been a mistake, the words hung in the air, heavy, deliberate. But it wasn't. Julian said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Isabella stepped forward again, closer this time. Her voice broke. "I'm sorry, Nathaniel. I'm so sorry." Her hands trembled as she reached for him, but he didn't move, didn't touch her, didn't even flinch. "Please," she whispered, tears spilling freely now. "We can fix this. I'll end it, I swear." "You already ended it," he said quietly. That was when she collapsed. Her knees hit the carpet with a dull, hollow sound. The room seemed to shrink around her as she looked up at him, no longer the composed woman from magazine covers, no longer the untouchable socialite, just someone broken. "Please," she sobbed, "don't do this. Don't destroy everything." Nathaniel looked down at her, and for a brief moment, just a brief, almost imperceptible moment, there was something human in his expression. A memory, a ghost of what they used to be. Then it vanished, replaced by something immovable. "This," he said slowly, "was destroyed the moment you chose him." Her sobs deepened. "I made a mistake." "No," Nathaniel cut in, his voice still calm but absolute. "You made a decision." One of the officers cleared his throat gently. "Sir, we've documented the situation." Nathaniel nodded once. "Good." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded document. Divorce papers, prepared, waiting. He let them fall onto the glass table beside her, a quiet, devastating sound. "You'll be served officially tomorrow," he said. Isabella stared at the papers like they were something unreal, something impossible. "You planned this," she whispered. Nathaniel met her gaze. Yes. No hesitation, no apology. Julian took a step back, distancing himself instinctively. Already retreating, already gone. Isabella saw it, and something inside her broke even further. Nathaniel adjusted his cufflinks. A small, habitual gesture. Control. Always control. Then he turned toward the door. Pausing only once, without looking back, he spoke. "By morning." His voice was steady, cold, final. "Everything you have access to will be gone." Her breath stopped. Accounts, assets, security, all of it, gone. "Nathaniel, please," she cried out, desperation raw and unfiltered. "I have nothing without—" He didn't let her finish, because he didn't need to. He already knew. "That," he said quietly, "is no longer my concern." And then he walked out. The door closed, softly, but the sound echoed like a gunshot. Inside the suite, Isabella remained on her knees, shaking,
broken, staring at a life that had just collapsed around her. Julian said nothing. The police officers exchanged brief glances before stepping out. One by one, they all left, until she was alone, completely. Outside, Nathaniel stepped into the elevator once more. The doors slid shut, and for the first time all night, he closed his eyes. Not in pain, not in regret, but in finality. Some things, he murmured to himself, don't deserve a second chance. The elevator descended, and with it, everything they had ever been. The morning after the scandal broke, New York did what it always did. It moved on. But not without taking something with it. At exactly 7 a.m., Nathaniel Brooks sat in his office, already 3 steps ahead of the world. The skyline outside was pale with early light, but his desk was illuminated by something far sharper. Documents, contracts, filings. Control had returned, and with it, purpose. Status, he said without looking up. Across from him, Margaret Ellison, his senior legal partner, adjusted her glasses. All joint accounts have been frozen, she began. Per your authorization and the prenuptial agreement clauses, Isabella no longer has independent access. Nathaniel nodded once. And the assets? Primary residence is under your name through the holding trust. Investments also secured. Vehicles, art collections, and liquid assets are being restructured as we speak. She paused, then added carefully, she'll have access to a temporary allowance, court mandated. Nathaniel's pen stopped mid-signature. For how long? Until the preliminary hearing. He resumed writing. Minimize it. Margaret hesitated. Nathaniel, optics matter. If this looks like retaliation, it's not retaliation, he said calmly. It's enforcement. Silence settled, because they both knew he was right. Across the city, Isabella Brooks woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the suffocating kind. She lay in an unfamiliar bed, the hotel room now stripped of any illusion of comfort. The sheets felt cold. The air felt heavier. Her phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. Messages, notifications, missed calls. She reached for it with trembling hands, and the world collapsed again. Manhattan socialite caught in scandal with married businessman. Wife of top attorney exposed in hotel affair. The fall of Isabella Brooks. Photos. Blurry but clear enough. Her face. Julian's silhouette. The hotel. Her breath caught in her throat. No, 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 she whispered, scrolling frantically. Comments flooded every post. She had everything. Disgusting. This is why men like him never trust. Gold digger exposed. Her hands shook violently as she locked the screen. Another notification appeared. Bank alert. Access restricted. She froze. Opened the app. Error. Again. Error. Her chest tightened. No. She dialed her bank. Your account has been temporarily restricted, the automated voice said. Her vision blurred. Transferred. Frozen. Pending legal authorization. Nathaniel. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She grabbed her purse, empty of anything useful, and rushed out of the hotel room. By 9:30 a.m., she was standing outside the townhouse, her home, or what used to be. The front door didn't open. Her key didn't work. She knocked, harder, again. Finally, the door opened, but not to welcome her. A man in a suit stood there, unfamiliar, professional. Mrs. Brooks, he said, you're not authorized to enter the property. Her stomach dropped. What? She whispered. This is my house. Legally, he replied, it is not. She stared at him, disbelief cracking into panic. Where is Nathaniel? Unavailable. I need to talk to him. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Her voice broke. You can't just lock me out. He handed her an envelope. Divorce papers. Official. Stamped. Real. You've been served, he said. The words echoed like a verdict. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She already knew what it said. Back at the firm, Nathaniel stood by the window once more. Daniel Reeves entered quietly. It's everywhere, he said. News outlets picked it up faster than expected. Nathaniel didn't react. And her? He asked. Daniel exhaled. She tried accessing the house. Didn't go well. A pause. She's calling you.
Nathaniel's expression remained unchanged. Of course she is. Daniel studied him carefully. You're really going through with all of it. Nathaniel turned slowly. There's no version of this, he said, where I walk it back. By noon, Isabella sat alone in a cafe she used to frequent. No one approached her now. No one smiled. Whispers followed her instead. Phones angled subtly in her direction. Photos taken when she wasn't looking, or when she was. Her phone buzzed again. Nathaniel. Her breath hitched as she answered instantly. Nathaniel, please, just listen. I am listening. His voice was calm, distant, unreachable. Tears streamed down her face. You've taken everything. I have nothing. You had everything, he corrected. A pause. And you chose to risk it. Her voice trembled. I didn't think. No, he said softly. You didn't. Silence swallowed her. I'll fix this, she whispered desperately. I'll do anything. Nathaniel closed his eyes briefly. Not in weakness, in finality. This isn't something you fix, he said. This is something you live with. Her breath shattered into sobs. Please, I'm begging you. People in the cafe stared now, not hiding it anymore. Nathaniel's voice lowered. You should prepare for what comes next. Fear crept into her chest. What do you mean? The hearing, he said. The settlement. A pause. You won't win. The words landed without force, but they crushed her all the same. When the call ended, Isabella remained frozen. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark cafe window, but she barely recognized the woman looking back. The elegance was gone, the confidence shattered. All that remained was consequence. That evening, Nathaniel signed the final set of preliminary documents. Margaret placed them neatly into a folder. It's done, she said. Nathaniel nodded. Good. She hesitated. Do you feel anything? A long pause. Nathaniel looked down at the papers, at the life he had just dismantled with ink and law. Then he spoke quietly. I feel... He stopped, searching, not for emotion, but for truth. Resolved. Outside, the city lights flickered on once more. Another night, another story, another fall. And somewhere in that vast, indifferent city, a woman who once had everything now had nothing left to lose, except the weight of what she had done. By the end of the week, the story had a name, and like all scandals in New York, it became entertainment. The Brooks scandal. It trended across every platform, clipped videos, cropped images, headlines rewritten for maximum damage. Speculation turned into narrative. Narrative turned into judgment, and judgment was ruthless. Inside a glass-walled studio in Midtown, a panel of media commentators dissected the story with polished detachment. A classic fall from grace, one of them said. She wasn't just anyone, another added. Isabella Brooks represented a certain ideal, wealth, beauty, access, and now, this. A third voice chimed in, sharper. People don't fall this hard without making very deliberate choices. The screen behind them flashed images of Isabella at charity galas. Isabella smiling beside Nathaniel. Isabella entering the hotel that night. A timeline of destruction. Across the city, in a small, dim apartment she had rented under urgency, Isabella watched it all unfold. Every word, every frame, every version of herself being rewritten by strangers. Her phone lay on the table, silent now, not because the calls had stopped, but because no one important was calling anymore. She had tried. Claire didn't answer. Her former agent sent a single message. We can't be associated with this right now. Even distant acquaintances had disappeared into polite silence. Her social media accounts, once filled with admiration, now flooded with contempt. She opened one post, then another, then another. Homewrecker. She deserves it. He built everything. She destroyed it. Her fingers trembled as she locked the screen again. It wasn't just humiliation. It was erasure. Meanwhile, Nathaniel Brooks had become something else entirely. Not a victim, not a spectacle. A presence. Controlled. Silent. Untouchable. At his firm, employees moved with heightened awareness when he passed. Respect had always followed him. Now it was edged with something sharper. No one mentioned the scandal directly,
but everyone knew. They had seen the headlines, watched the clips, read between the lines, and what they saw was not a broken man, but a man who had acted decisively, legally, irreversibly. "Nathaniel," Margaret said one afternoon, stepping into his office, "there's been an influx of interview requests, major outlets." "I'm not interested," he replied without looking up. "They're framing you," as she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "a symbol of restraint, control. Some are even calling it admirable." Nathaniel's pen paused briefly. "Admiration is irrelevant," he said. "They want your statement," he resumed writing. "They won't get one." Margaret studied him for a moment. "You understand," she said slowly, "that your silence is part of the story now." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, finally meeting her gaze. Good, because silence was power, and Nathaniel had no intention of giving that away. Across town, Isabella sat in the corner of a quiet cafe, her head lowered beneath oversized sunglasses, a weak attempt at invisibility. It didn't work. Two women at a nearby table whispered, not quietly enough. "That's her, isn't it?" "I think so. She looks different." "Of course she does." A soft laugh. Isabella's grip tightened around her coffee cup. She didn't look up, didn't react, because reacting would make it real. And it was already too real. Her job offers gone, brand partnerships terminated, invitations revoked. Even the charity boards she once chaired had issued formal statements distancing themselves. Her name, once an asset, had become a liability. That night, she scrolled through old photos, herself and Nathaniel at events, smiling, perfect, untouchable. She stopped at one image, a candid moment, not staged. Nathaniel looking at her not with distance, not with control, but something softer, something real. Her breath caught. When had that disappeared? Or had she simply stopped noticing? Tears blurred her vision. For the first time since everything fell apart, she wasn't thinking about money or reputation or survival. She was thinking about him and what she had lost. Meanwhile, in his penthouse office, Nathaniel stood once again before the window. The same view, the same city, but something had shifted. Daniel Reeves stepped in quietly. "She's spiraling," he said. "Lost contracts, public backlash. It's hitting hard." Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. "Julian?" he asked instead. Daniel exhaled, distanced himself completely. Public statement coming soon, probably denying anything serious. Nathaniel gave a faint nod. Predictable. Cowardice often was. "She tried contacting him," Daniel added. He didn't respond. A pause. Nathaniel's reflection stared back at him in the glass, unchanged, unaffected, or so it seemed. "Anything else?" Nathaniel asked. Daniel hesitated. "She's alone." Silence filled the room, heavy, lingering. But Nathaniel didn't turn, didn't react, didn't move. "Understood," he said. Later that night, he sat in the quiet of his home. The same house, now emptier, cleaner, colder. He poured himself a drink, staring at the untouched second glass across from him. A habit. One he hadn't yet broken. His phone buzzed, a message, unknown number. He didn't need to read it to know who it was, but he did anyway. "I know I don't deserve it, but please, just one chance to talk." He stared at the words, longer than necessary, longer than he should have. Then he locked the phone, set it down, and said nothing, because silence was still his answer. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, unforgiving, unapologetic, and somewhere within it, a woman was learning that losing everything wasn't the hardest part. Living with it was. Winter arrived without warning. One morning, the city woke up colder, and for Isabella Brooks, there was no longer anywhere left to hide from it. The apartment she now lived in was temporary, that's what she told herself. A small, furnished space on the edge of Brooklyn, far from the glass towers and polished streets she once called home. The heating clicked unevenly, the walls were thin, the silence was no longer elegant, it was suffocating. She sat on the edge of the bed staring at her phone, one name, one last possibility. Julian. Her thumb hovered before pressing call. It rang, once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. Her chest tightened. She tried again. This time, it didn't even ring. The call ended instantly. Blocked. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, you don't get to just disappear. Her voice broke, because deep down, she knew he already had. Later that day, she found what she wasn't supposed to see. A statement. Clean. Strategic. Detached. Any interactions between myself and Mrs. Brooks were strictly professional and have been misrepresented by the media. Julian Carter. Isabella stared at the screen, her vision blurring. Professional. Misrepresented. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life, someone else's mistake. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled further. Photos of Julian at events, smiling, composed, already rebuilding his image, already moving on, without her. A hollow laugh escaped her lips. Of course, she whispered. Of course you would. That night, the loneliness became louder. It crept into every corner of the apartment. No messages, no calls, no invitations, no one left. She wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch, staring at nothing, and for the first time there was no distraction left. No performance, no illusion, just truth, and it was unbearable. Meanwhile, across the river, Nathaniel Brooks moved forward. Not dramatically, not visibly, but deliberately. His routine had sharpened. Morning runs before sunrise, longer hours at the firm, fewer social appearances. He removed what was unnecessary, focused on what remained. Control, structure, silence. At the office, his presence was quieter now, but heavier. Decisions were made faster. Meetings ended sooner. There was no wasted motion, no emotional residue, only precision. One evening, Margaret stepped into his office again. "You've been offered a partnership expansion," she said. "National level. It's significant." Nathaniel didn't look up immediately. "Send me the details," he replied. She hesitated, then added more carefully, "You don't have to prove anything, you know." That made him pause. Slowly, he leaned back in his chair. "This isn't about proving anything," he said. "Then what is it about?" A quiet moment passed. Nathaniel's gaze shifted toward the window. The city stretched endlessly beyond it, alive, indifferent. "Moving forward," he said. Margaret studied him. There was something different now, not broken, not even hardened, just closed. That same night, Isabella sat at a small kitchen table, a stack of unpaid bills in front of her. Numbers she didn't understand, deadlines she couldn't meet, consequences she had never imagined facing alone. Her phone buzzed. For a split second, hope. She grabbed it. Unknown number. "Hello?" Her voice trembled. A pause. Then a familiar tone. Cold. Official. "Mrs. Brooks, this is regarding your court appearance next week." Her grip tightened. "Yes, I understand." More instructions, more reminders, more reality. When the call ended, she sat there, unmoving. Then slowly she lowered her head into her hands and cried. Not softly, not gracefully, but completely. Days passed, then weeks, and still no one came back. One afternoon, she walked past a storefront window and caught her reflection. She stopped, looked, really looked. The woman staring back at her was thinner, paler, tired in a way makeup couldn't fix. Gone was the effortless confidence. Gone was the light. All that remained was consequence. "I did this," she whispered to herself. No excuses, no denial, just truth. And somehow that hurt more than anything else. Across the city, Nathaniel sat alone at his dining table, dinner untouched. The silence familiar now, almost comfortable. He picked up his phone, scrolled, paused. An old photo. Isabella, laughing, unfiltered, real. For a moment, just a moment, his expression softened. Then he locked the screen, set the phone down, and let the memory fade, because some things, once broken, were not meant to be revisited. That night, snow began to fall over New York. Soft, quiet, indifferent. It covered everything equally, the towers, the streets, the past. But it couldn't erase what had already been done. In a small apartment across the river, Isabella sat by the window, watching it fall. Alone. Completely alone. And for the first time she understood. Not the scandal, not the loss of status, not the money, but the cost of a single decision that could never be undone. Years passed. Not quickly, not mercifully, but steadily like the slow turning of a page that could never be flipped back. New York had forgotten. That was its nature. Scandals burned bright, then faded into background noise, replaced by newer stories, fresher mistakes. The name Isabella Brooks no longer trended. It no longer mattered. But for Isabella, time had not erased anything. It had only clarified it. She stepped out of the cab on a gray autumn afternoon, her hands wrapped tightly around the strap of a worn leather bag. The city felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because she had. The towering buildings no longer felt like a stage she belonged on. They felt distant, unreachable. She looked up at the familiar glass structure ahead, Nathaniel's firm. Her breath caught slightly. For a moment, doubt crept in. You shouldn't be here. But there was nowhere else left to go. Inside, the lobby was just as she remembered. Polished marble, quiet efficiency, people moving with purpose. She didn't belong here anymore. The receptionist glanced up. Yes? Isabella hesitated. I'm here to see Nathaniel Brooks. The woman's expression shifted subtly, recognition flickering for a brief second before professionalism returned. Do you have an appointment? No, I'm sorry, he doesn't take walk-ins. Isabella nodded slowly. Of course he didn't. Please, she said softly, just tell him Isabella is here. A pause. The receptionist studied her, really studied her this time, then picked up the phone. Upstairs, Nathaniel stood by the window. Different office, same view. Bigger now, higher. Everything in his life had expanded, except his past. Margaret stepped in quietly. There's someone here to see you. I'm busy. She hesitated. It's Isabella. Silence, stillness. Then Nathaniel turned, not quickly, not emotionally, just deliberately. Send her up, he said. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Isabella's reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls, older, softer, worn. Gone was the polished perfection. What remained was something quieter, something real. The doors opened, and there he was, Nathaniel Brooks. Standing exactly as she remembered, but not the same. There was a calm about him now, not cold, not distant, just complete. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Time folded in on itself. Memories, unspoken words, everything that had once been hung between them. Then Isabella stepped forward. Her voice trembled. Hi. Nathaniel nodded slightly. Isabella. No warmth, no hostility, just acknowledgement. I won't take much of your time, she said quickly. I needed to see you. He gestured toward a chair. Sit. She did, carefully, like she didn't quite belong in the space, because she didn't. I heard about you, she said softly. The firm, your expansion, everything. Nathaniel remained standing. Work tends to continue. She swallowed. Of course. Silence stretched, uncomfortable, heavy. I'm not here for anything, she added quickly. Not money, not help, Her voice faltered. I needed to say it. Nathaniel's gaze remained steady. Say what? Her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. The words landed softly, but they carried years of weight. I know it doesn't matter, she continued, her voice breaking. I know I destroyed everything. I know I don't deserve anything from you. She stood suddenly, emotions spilling over. But I think about it every day, she said, about that night, about what I did, about who I became. Tears streamed down her face now, unfiltered. I was selfish. I was blind, and I lost everything because of it. Nathaniel said nothing. Didn't interrupt, didn't react. So she stepped closer. And then, just like that night, she fell to her knees, not out of drama, not out of desperation, but because she had nothing left to stand on. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know I can't fix it. I know I can't go back. But if there's even a part of you that remembers us, anything, just... Her voice collapsed into silence. Nathaniel looked down at her. The same image, the same moment, years apart, but everything was different. Because now there was no anger left, no pain, just clarity. Slowly he stepped back, creating distance, not just physically, but finally, completely. I do remember, he said quietly. Her breath caught. Hope, fragile, dangerous, flickered. But then he continued. I remember exactly who we were. A pause, and exactly what you chose to do. The hope shattered. Tears fell harder now. I know, she whispered. I just thought, maybe... There is no maybe, Isabella. His voice wasn't harsh. That made it worse. There's only consequence. She closed her eyes, because she already knew. She had always known. I forgave you, Nathaniel said. Her eyes snapped open. What? A small silence followed. I forgave you, he repeated. Her heart raced. Then, years ago, the words sank in slowly, painfully. But forgiveness, he continued, doesn't mean reversal. Tears blurred her vision again. I'm not asking to go back. Yes, you are, he said gently, and he was right. I built a life after you, Nathaniel said, not proudly, not bitterly, just truth. And it doesn't include this. This, her, the past. She lowered her head, the weight of it finally crushing what little remained. I understand, she whispered. And for the first time, she truly did. Nathaniel walked to his desk, picking up a file, not as dismissal, but as closure. I hope you find something, he said. She looked up. Something better than who you were. Her breath trembled. I don't think I deserve that. Nathaniel met her gaze one last time. That's not for me to decide. And with that, he turned away. She stayed there for a moment longer, on her knees, in silence, in acceptance. Then slowly she stood, wiped her tears, and walked out. The door closed behind her, soft, final. Nathaniel didn't look back, because there was nothing left to see. Outside, the city moved on, as it always did, unchanged, unmoved. And somewhere within it, two lives continued, separate, irreversible. Not every ending needed closure. Some only needed truth. And this one had finally found it.